And I can't have children. The giant bride said. Cowboy smiled. Good. I've got kids for both. I can't have children, Magnolia Thorne said, her voice steady despite the shame burning in her chest. The giant mail-order bride stood 6 feet 1 inch tall in the dusty Montana train station, towering over most men, her calloused hands clutching a worn carpet bag that held everything she owned. She'd traveled 3 days to marry a stranger, a cowboy rancher named Jonas Reed, who'd answered her letter with one simple line, "Come, I need a wife who can work hard and love order." But when she finally confessed the truth that had made her unmarriageable back east, that scarlet fever had stolen her ability to bear children, she expected rejection, pity, or worse, the cold dismissal she'd grown accustomed to. The cowboy smiled instead, a mysterious warmth in his eyes that didn't match the worry lines creasing his weathered face. Good, Jonas said quietly, glancing toward the wagon where 5 pairs of eyes watched from the shadows, children ranging from a hostile 12-year-old boy to a crying baby girl. I've got something else entirely, and these kids need a mother who'll stay. His words hung in the air like a promise and a warning. But Magnolia noticed something strange, the way his hand traced the wagon's edge before gripping it, the careful counting of his steps, the slight squint when he looked directly at her face. The giant mail-order bride had revealed her broken secret, but what devastating truth was the cowboy hiding? Could a woman who couldn't create life become a mother to children who'd already lost one? And what something did Jonas possess that made her infertility not a curse, but somehow the very reason he'd chosen her? The wagon ride to the ranch stretched 15 miles through country, so wild and beautiful it made Magnolia's throat tight. Pine trees climbed the mountainsides like dark green soldiers, and the September sky burned orange and gold as the sun dipped lower. But she couldn't focus on the scenery. The children stared at her like she was a curiosity in a traveling show. The oldest boy, Ethan, sat rigid beside his father, arms crossed, jaw set hard. He had Jonas's dark hair, but his mother's delicate features, and anger radiated off him like heat from a stove. The 9-year-old girl, Clara, kept stealing glances at Magnolia's hands, her eyes wide and uncertain. The 6-year-old twins, Samuel and Stella, whispered to each other and giggled behind their hands, pointing at Magnolia's height. And the baby, Violet, fussed in a basket between Clara's feet, her tiny fists waving at nothing. Jonas didn't speak much during the ride. He kept his eyes forward, but Magnolia saw how his knuckles whitened on the reins, how he leaned slightly forward as if straining to see the road ahead. When a rabbit darted across their path, he didn't react until it was almost too late, jerking the horses to the side at the last second. Magnolia's heart jumped, but she said nothing. She'd learned long ago that men didn't like being questioned, especially about things that made them look weak. The Reed Ranch appeared as the last light drained from the sky. It wasn't much. A 2-story farmhouse that had seen better days, a barn leaning slightly to one side, a chicken coop, and corrals that needed mending. But smoke curled from the chimney, and lamplight glowed warm in the windows. It looked like a home. It looked like something worth fighting for. Jonas helped her down from the wagon, his hands strong and warm on her waist. For a moment, they stood close enough that she could smell leather and pine soap on his skin. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly, so the children couldn't hear. "I know this isn't what you probably imagined." "Nothing in my life has been what I imagined," Magnolia replied. "But I'm here now and I keep my promises." Something shifted in his expression, relief, maybe, or hope. He nodded once, then turned to unload her bag. But as he reached for it, he misjudged the distance, his hand grasping at air before finding the handle. The gesture was small, barely noticeable, but Magnolia saw it, and suddenly pieces began falling into place. The careful movements, the squinting, the way he'd chosen a wife based on a letter instead of meeting in person first. Jonas Reed wasn't just looking for a mother for his children. He was looking for someone strong enough to hold this family together when he couldn't anymore. Inside, the house smelled like wood smoke and something burning. Clara rushed to the stove and pulled off a pot of beans that had scorched black on the bottom. "I'm sorry, Papa," she said, her voice small and ashamed. "I forgot about them again." "It's all right, sweetheart," Jonas said, but Magnolia heard the exhaustion in his voice. This man had been trying to be both mother and father, trying to run a ranch and raise 5 children, all while his sight slowly failed him. How long had he been drowning? How long had these children been watching him struggle? Magnolia set down her bag and rolled up her sleeves. "Well," she said, keeping her voice light, "lucky for all of us, I'm a decent cook. Clara, show me where your father keeps the flour. Ethan, I'll need wood for the stove. Samuel, Stella, you two set the table. And someone hand me that baby before she works herself into a fit." The children stared at her, uncertain. They'd been running wild for so long, they'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone take charge. Ethan's jaw tightened, rebellion flashing in his eyes. "You're not my mother," he said, the words sharp as broken glass. "You can't just come in here and start ordering us around." Magnolia met his gaze steadily. She'd faced down angry men twice her size, weathered storms that had broken stronger people. One hurt, angry boy wasn't going to scare her off. "You're right," she said calmly. "I'm not your mother. I'll never be her, and I won't try to replace her. But I am your father's wife now, and that makes me part of this family. So here's how this works. I'll respect you if you respect me. I'll listen to you if you listen to me. And I'll stay, no matter how hard you try to push me away. Because that's what family does." The silence stretched thin and fragile. Ethan's eyes shone with unshed tears, his anger cracking just enough to show the fear underneath. Then Jonas's hand landed gently on his son's shoulder. "Son," he said quietly, "give her a chance. That's all I'm asking." Ethan jerked away and stormed out of the house, the door slamming behind him. Clara flinched at the sound. The twins went very still, and baby Violet finally started crying in earnest, her wails filling the kitchen like a siren. Magnolia didn't hesitate. She crossed the room, lifted the baby from the basket and held her against her chest. Violet screamed louder, arching her back, her face red with fury. But Magnolia just started walking, bouncing slightly, humming low in her throat, the way she'd once hummed to the horses she'd gentled back home. Round and round the kitchen she walked, her voice steady, her arms strong, while Clara got the flour and Jonas sank into a chair like a man who'd been holding up the world for too long. Slowly, so slowly, Violet's cries softened, her tiny fists unclenched. Her body relaxed into Magnolia's arms, and when the baby finally fell asleep, drooling slightly on Magnolia's shoulder, Jonas looked up with something close to wonder in his eyes. "She hasn't let anyone but Clara hold her in months," he whispered. Magnolia smiled, tired but genuine. "Then I guess she and I have an understanding." That night, after a simple meal of cornbread and fresh beans, after the children had been tucked into bed and the house had fallen quiet, Jonas and Magnolia sat across from each other at the kitchen table. A single lamp flickered between them, casting long shadows on the walls. This was the moment Magnolia had been dreading, the moment when they'd have to talk about what came next, about what kind of marriage this would really be. Jonas spoke first, his voice low and rough. "I need to tell you the truth, the whole truth." He paused, his hands curling into fists on the table. "I'm going blind, Magnolia. It's a disease the doctor called retinitis pigmentosa. Started about 2 years ago. First it was just trouble seeing at night. Then colors started fading. Now I'm losing my peripheral vision, and it's getting worse every month. In 5 years, maybe less, I won't be able to see at all." The words hit like stones, but Magnolia didn't flinch. She'd already suspected something like this. "Does anyone else know?" "The doctor in Billings." "No one here. If word gets out, my sister-in-law will use it to take the children. She's been waiting for an excuse ever since my wife died." His voice cracked on the last words, and for the first time, Magnolia saw the full weight of what this man carried. "I needed someone strong, someone who wouldn't need me to be perfect, someone who'd stay when things got hard." He finally met her eyes, and she saw fear there, raw and honest. "When you wrote that you couldn't have children, I thought maybe God was finally showing me mercy. I can't bring more children into this world when I don't know what kind of father I'll be able to be. But the 5 I have, They need someone who'll love them, not because they have to, but because they choose to. Magnolia reached across the table and took his hand. His skin was rough, scarred from years of ranch work, but warm and real. I came here broken too, Jonas. Everyone back east looked at me like I was less than a woman because I couldn't do the one thing women are supposed to do. But maybe that's exactly why I'm the right person for this family. I won't be distracted by babies of my own. I can give everything I have to your children, to our children, if you'll let me. Something in Jonas's expression shattered and reformed all at once. You'd really stay? Knowing what's coming. I'm strong enough for both of us, she said simply. That's what you need, isn't it? Someone strong? He nodded, unable to speak. And in that moment, in that quiet kitchen, with the lamp burning low and the Montana night pressing against the windows, two broken people made a promise. Not a promise of passion or romance, but something deeper. A promise of partnership, of survival, of building something good from broken pieces. But outside in the darkness, Ethan sat on the porch steps, his arms wrapped around his knees, listening to every word. And the question that burned in his chest was simple and terrible. Could this giant stranger really keep them all from falling apart? The first week nearly broke them all. Ethan sabotaged everything Magnolia touched. He left gates open so the horses scattered across 3 miles of countryside. He forgot to tell her the well pump stuck unless you hit it twice on the left side. He whispered to his siblings that she'd leave just like Mama did, that giants didn't belong in families, that everything would fall apart. But Magnolia didn't break. When the horses ran, she spent 6 hours tracking them through brush that tore her skirts and scraped her arms bloody. She returned with every single animal, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, and simply handed Ethan a brush. "Help me clean them," she said quietly. "They're scared." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe respect, but he took the brush. Clara watched everything like a hawk, torn between desperate hope and learned caution. She'd been playing mother for 2 years, and the weight had bent her small shoulders. One morning, Magnolia found her crying over burnt biscuits, her hands shaking with exhaustion. "I can't do anything right," Clara sobbed. Magnolia knelt beside her, took the pan, and tossed the ruined biscuits out for the chickens. "You've been doing everything, sweetheart. That's different. Now you get to just be 9 years old again." Clara looked up, disbelieving. "What if you leave?" Magnolia pulled her close. "I won't, I promise." The twins tested her in different ways, hiding her shoes, putting a frog in her bed, asking impossible questions at bedtime. But Magnolia answered every challenge with patience and unexpected humor. She wore the muddy shoes. She named the frog Herbert and let him live in a box on the porch. She told stories about being teased for her height until Samuel asked, "Did it stop hurting?" She smiled sadly. "No, but I stopped believing them." Stella climbed into her lap then, small and warm and trusting. Only baby Violet accepted her without question, reaching for Magnolia's face with sticky fingers, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Jonas watched it all, his vision blurring more each day, his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. But then the letter came. The letter arrived on a cold October morning, delivered by the sheriff himself. Magnolia's hands trembled as she read the official county seal. Petition for custody review. Priscilla Hartwell, sister of the deceased, claims unsuitable living conditions and requests immediate removal of minor children. The hearing was set for 2 weeks. Jonas sat at the table, his face drained of color, hands clenched so tight his knuckles went white. "She's been waiting for this," he whispered. "She always said I couldn't raise them alone. Now she'll use my eyes against me, use you being a stranger against us." Magnolia set the letter down carefully, her jaw set with determination. "Then we show them the truth. We show them a family." The next 13 days were war disguised as preparation. Magnolia drilled the children on reading and arithmetic. She scrubbed the house until it gleamed. She mended every torn shirt, patched every worn quilt, organized shelves, and documented everything: meal plans, lesson schedules, medical records. But more than that, she loved them fiercely. She braided Clara's hair each morning and listened to her whispered fears at night. She built a better treehouse with Samuel and taught Stella her letters. She held Violet through teething pain and sang until her voice went hoarse. And Ethan, angry, hurting Ethan, she gave him space but never gave up, leaving his favorite meals on the table, mending his torn jacket without being asked, simply being present. 3 days before the hearing, Jonas's vision failed completely during a storm. He stumbled in the barn, panicked, disoriented, and fell hard, his arms snapping with a sickening crack. Magnolia found him in the darkness, rain pouring through gaps in the roof, and without hesitation she lifted him, this grown man, and carried him inside. The children watched, terrified, as she set the bone with steady hands, wrapped it tight, and made him drink willow bark tea for the pain. That night, Ethan found her alone in the kitchen, her face finally showing the fear she'd hidden. "You're really not leaving," he said, "not a question anymore." She looked at this boy who'd fought her so hard, and her voice broke. "Never. You're mine now, all of you." He fell into her arms and sobbed like the child he still was. The hearing was held in the Copper Falls courthouse, a grim building that smelled of old wood and judgment. Priscilla sat straight-backed and righteous, her lawyer beside her listing failures, a blind man, an unsuitable woman too masculine to be maternal, isolated conditions, no female relatives for guidance. But then the children testified. Clara spoke of lessons and bedtime stories, and someone who finally let her be a child. Samuel described the treehouse and how Magnolia could lift hay bales and fix anything broken. Stella said simply, "She makes Papa smile again." And Ethan, bitter, angry Ethan, stood tall and said, "She's the strongest person I know. She carried my father through a storm. She tracked our horses for 6 hours. She stays when things are hard. That's what a mother does." His voice cracked. "That's what our mother does." The judge watched Magnolia, this giant woman with calloused hands and a face full of fierce love. "Miss Thorne, Mrs. Reed, do you understand what you're taking on? A blind man, 5 children, a struggling ranch." Magnolia stood, her voice clear and unwavering. "Your Honor, I can't have children of my own. Scarlet fever took that from me when I was 8. But God didn't take away my ability to love. These children don't need me to have birthed them. They need me to stay, and I will. Through every storm, every hard season, every challenge. Because that's what family means." The judge's gavel fell. Petition denied. These children stay with their father and stepmother. Outside the courthouse, the sky had cleared to brilliant blue. Jonas pulled Magnolia close, his blind eyes wet with tears. "Thank you," he whispered, "for choosing us." She smiled, this giant mail-order bride who'd found her purpose. "You chose me first. You saw that my broken pieces fit your broken pieces. Around them, 5 children pressed close, no longer orphaned by circumstance, no longer half-raised, but wholly loved." Ethan took Magnolia's hand.
Clara held the other.
The twins grabbed onto Jonas, and baby Violet laughed, reaching for them all. The ride home was filled with chatter and relief and planning for winter. That night, after the children were asleep, Jonas and Magnolia stood on the porch watching stars pierce the darkness. "I can't see them anymore," he admitted quietly. "Describe them for me." She wrapped her strong arms around him and painted the sky with words, silver pinpricks scattered like spilled sugar, the moon hanging low and full, the mountains dark silhouettes against infinity. And Jonas Reed, blind cowboy rancher, leaned into his giant bride and finally felt like he could breathe again. Magnolia had come to Montana expecting rejection. Instead, she found 5 children who needed the exact love she'd thought was worthless. A man who valued her strength over conventional beauty. A home built not on what they couldn't do, but on what they could do together. She couldn't create life, but she could save it. She couldn't bear children, but she could raise them with everything she had. And sometimes, the families we make are stronger than the ones we're born into. Now, let me ask you something that matters. Have you ever felt like the one thing you couldn't do made you worthless, only to discover later that your so-called brokenness was exactly what someone else needed? Maybe you thought you had nothing left to give, but then life showed you that your scars could heal someone else's wounds. that your empty spaces could hold someone else's overflow, that the very thing you were ashamed of could become your greatest gift. Magnolia thought she was incomplete because she couldn't have children. Jonas thought he was failing because he was going blind. But together, with 5 hurting kids who just needed someone to stay, they built something more beautiful than perfect ever could have been. So tell us, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if this story touched something deep in your heart, if it reminded you that broken people can still build beautiful things, if it made you believe again in second chances and chosen families, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Because somewhere out there, someone feels too broken to be loved, too damaged to be wanted, too different to belong. And maybe, just maybe, this story will remind them that the right people don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to stay. Drop your location below. Let's see how far this message of hope travels.